And I would like to welcome to the chat this morning Wades, who is on Twitter as Wades.eth. He's also in Discord. I know him primarily from the TopShot server, where he is one of our highest moderators. We have different tiers of moderators, but Wades is a rock star and helping keep the community moving in an awesome direction. Welcome, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Thank you for having me on. How are you guys?
We are doing well here. We've been discussing the fact that you all have summer and we're freezing over here on the other side of the
Oh
world.
man, I don't envy you. I was just been apologies. I'm a bit late. I said to you earlier in Discord chat and DMs that daylight savings got me again, so I was half an hour or an hour late almost now. So my bad.
No worries. The bonus of having a community that's worldwide is we always have people around, and also, even if the event is not at a time that works for folks, we record them so they don't miss out. So this is
Yeah, that's great.
we're totally good. So I think that, with what we're doing in the whale community, I've been
Mm,
focusing a lot on an interview series for the Metaverse Makers, Movers and Shakers, which is not really the artists in the space and not really those who are developing the games, but
mm,
alternatively, everybody else who kind of fills in the extra space and makes those projects successful. And in
mm.
your case, like, you have been hugely influential in the Top Shot community. You've been,
Thank you.
like, your collection has been growing pretty awesomely. And if that's, at some point something you'd like to show off, we would be more than excited to see it. But what we want to talk about today is your experience here in the crypto space. Kind of like
Mhm.
tell us how you got to this journey and what you are excited about in the space. So we'll start with, like, what got you into crypto in the very first place?
Oh man, that goes back a long way, a way I probably can't even remember, to be honest with you. You know, that not that clearly. I think it goes back to, oh, it probably 6, 7 years ago. And it's one of those moments where you go, man, I wish I could go back and redo that one again. So I finished a game of basketball. It was would have been late at night, and I heard about this, Bitcoin, that sort of stuff. Anyway, so started digging around. I can't remember the exact year, but there was a white paper. So I sort of started reading through that and go, this is pretty, full on. And I was like, I'll just put it away. So this would have been around the time when Bitcoin would have been probably under $50. So long and short of it, I buried it, too hard basket, went back to playing whatever game I was playing. Probably would have been Battlefield or something along those lines back then. So, fast forward years and years down the track, obviously crypto started blossoming and all that sort of stuff. And I would have just maybe gone into a couple of coins. It would have been, say, 4 years ago. And the reason I got into it, like everyone, it's a bit of a, I suppose, a freedom of choice and in finances and so forth. I come from the finance world. I'm a financial advisor in the real world. So I do see these investment opportunities pop up every now and then. And obviously Bitcoin started rising through the ranks as this alternative investment. Not so much in Australia, but like you said before, it's all global. So you do catch bits and pieces here and there. So really how I got started was that's my introduction to sort of the crypto space. Would have been back way back in the day, which I totally ignored, and I'm sure everyone's got a Bitcoin story as well. But I really started getting into it maybe 4 years ago, roughly around there, just buying a couple of different coins, which really haven't done much. Would have had some ETH. Like again, we probably with most of you guys, if you just kept your position from 3, 4 years ago, you would have done well. But as things come up, different opportunities in the NFT space came up. I just liquidated it and then put it into would have been God's Own Chain, and then that turned into NBA TopShots. So that's my little intro to the crypto space.
And that's super fun. I actually have a bunch of Gods Unchained cards as well.
I love that game.
It's, I need to get into the playing of the game. I have the cards and I look at them and they're pretty, but
They
I
are.
haven't yet built a deck. I watch Gian stream sometimes because he streams Gods Unchained, and I was like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna figure this out, but I haven't got there yet. But I think it's interesting from what you shared, like coming from the financial sector, that the projects
Mm,
in the NFT space that have drawn you in
mm.
seem to both be the collectible card type games. Is that primarily the things that you're focused on? Is that also something that, in the real world, are you collecting, the paper cards as well, or
Yeah. Yeah.
traditional?
Yeah, look, it's a good pickup. It's an interesting pickup because I haven't really thought about it that way. But I suppose it's coming from the real world. Like you said, I did collect basketball cards and probably stopped about 2013. The reason why I went into Gods Unchained was I've said it on a couple other podcasts where it was basically, again, it sort of all this stems from gaming, I suppose. I was playing Apex for a little while there, and like with most of these games where you've got skins and all those sort of overlays, you play a long time, probably pay a bit of money too, and you don't get to keep any of it. So um, obviously this NFT space can solve that to a degree, and I just started googling a couple of things going back a few years, and that's how I landed in the NFT space and this sort of play to earn economy. Which is how I became involved in Gods Unchained. Just the fact that they're both cards, I don't know. Maybe it's just my sort of subconscious that led me that way. Maybe it's sort of a little bit more tangible than, to me anyway, at that point in time, than say art, which is something I do love. I just don't really have the time to sort of get into it, nor did I really have the finances to buy some of the higher end stuff, which is something that I do want to get into over the coming little while. But yeah, that's sort of my introduction, coming from the crypto to the NFT space, largely on the back of just the, I think, gaming again, and just that maybe a little bit more the tangible aspect of it, being the cards, and even though you can't touch and feel it, you do use them, you play with them, that sort of stuff. So I think that's sort of probably how it evolved.
I think that's a very powerful thought, right? Because, as you mentioned, there are things that traditionally you could use, you can play with, you can do things with
Mm,
cards.
yeah.
And that, I think, for mainstream adoption is kind of the
Mm,
key, right? Like maybe with crypto, we have a lot of folks that are gamers, and that's an easier transition because you already have these assets, but they're not really
exactly.
yours. But
Yep.
for the people who are not versed at all in crypto, this is almost a one-to-one translation of, you have a card, now here's another card, so there, it's not that big of a jump, which
Hmm.
I think is really going to give this sector of the NFT space perhaps
Mm,
an advantage for onboarding, and then people can branch out from that point. And is that something either in the Gods Unchained community or the Top
mm,
Shot community that you've seen it all?
hmm. Yeah, look, I'm in both actually. There's a tweet I sent out in middle or late July, and as you know, probably very well, that we weren't supposed to really send anything out in closed beta and alpha and all sort of stuff. I did sneak a few tweets in there and that sort of stuff. It was a bit naughty, but one of them was, I just said something like the NBA Top Shot will change the NFT landscape forever, and it'll bring massive adoption and all that sort of stuff. So it's played out that way, and it's not really, to me, it's no surprise because you're sort of marrying the one of the biggest fan bases in the world, if not the biggest, being the NBA, into something that just makes sense. To me, it made sense. Being the NFT, the collectible, the basketball, digital card. I mean, the cardboard space to some degree has seen an element of that digital space through Panini. with blockchain, and so they weren't foreign to it, but and I think that probably really helped NBA TopShot to bring to at least introduce that concept to the cardboard guys, because they've seen that and they've seen it probably done fairly poorly. Just there's no explanation. It's just like, yeah, here's a digital card, do something with it. That's Panini basically. So there was an introduction. I think the ice is sort of broken a little bit for NBA Top Shot. So when it sort of came around, people seen, there's a fully fledged marketplace, a thriving community. I don't think the onboarding process is probably as difficult as many of us maybe thought. So, man, it's been a hell of a time though.
Definitely has been quite the ride. Say, getting from that early closed beta and all of the progress that we've seen in the Top Shot community, and then obviously this mid-January just explosion of the marketplace and the community. Yeah. I think the last stats I saw for the Discord were that we were just shy of 55,000 people in the server, which is a huge number, And in terms of, the moments on the marketplace, everybody's trying to get packs and they're trying to snag the deals and, kind of those star players, or else, the interesting thing about Top Shot is there are so many different sets right now that are open and able to be collected and completed. And so we've seen a lot of different types of collectors in that space and in the community. And with, I guess, your collection specifically, like, what's your focus? Are you more on a completionist, or are you collecting a lot of cards simply to, hold for later? What's the approach that you've got?
That's a very good question. It evolves. So going back a little while, in terms of budget, it really comes down to, I get this question a lot these days too, just because you've been in the game for a bit and people think you know what you're doing. Sort of, you think you do, but you give it a shot. So with me, it comes down to budget and timeframes, and what your goals are. Back when we started out in June, I put in comparison to most folk in Alpha, I put in a very small amount, which is about $2,500. I think it's about 27 something. That actually was 2,500 plus a couple $100 and maybe a month later. So with respect to everyone else, it was quite tiny. For me, it was always just about growing the collection as quick as I could, as far as I could, being focusing on the base set and what I'm not sure if the WoW community is invested and knows much about the sets, but the metallic gold, which is sort of like a parallel to a base set, it's a little bit more rare. It's minted to 99, whereas the base set varies between up to from 1,000 to up to about 4,000 for some of the players. So that was my focus, and I've always, it's on record. You can check Twitter and Discord. You might remember I've always been very high on the project, and I've always said this thing will change the landscape from day one, because I could see, there was this awesome potential there with the, how the because I know what cardboard guys, like. They want to make a bit of money. They want to flip cards and all sorts of stuff. They don't really, a lot of them don't really care for some of the cards. They just want to make some money out of it. So this marketplace now caters to it. So that was sort of my vision. Going back to my own collection, I've basically focused on growing it as quickly as I could, just using some of my knowledge from the NBA and investing in certain players. So a lot of my stuff is in the base set, and for good reason. Given what's happened with the platform, my value absolutely exploded from whatever, 6-7 weeks ago. So now to a point where I can, that's again part of my strategy, where I can start to consolidate a little bit, because it's quite hard to manage 7,000 moments, and especially given that my focus is probably a little bit more on the community side and will be going forward, more so than it has been up to date. So right now I'm trying to sell off a little bit, which is hard to do because they're like all your little kids. To sell off a little bit and just maybe right now is actually my focus is to get into the hollow set, which is the current challenge and so forth. So that's where I'm trending toward. But previous to that, it was just really just get in there and get whatever you can just to amplify that the return on your investment. So to get to this point, which has sort of really worked out well, almost perfect for me anyway, for what I wanted to achieve.
It's awesome. And I think it's really interesting. We actually had Intangible on last
Yeah,
week
yeah,
talking about, the Intangible.market site that he'd built and kind of the account valuations. And one
yeah,
of the things that he had mentioned when people were asking about like recommendations for kind of best bets is actually looking at the base sets because it, theoretically is the most accessible. It's the best point of entry, but also like that's where you can really kind of get the full scope of what's going on because those higher tier moments
hmm
generally don't exist unless there's been a base set moment of that
hmm
type.
hmm
And so that has been something that has really, for the community, made a lot of these plays and the experience more accessible. So I think it's
yeah.
interesting that, you've also reiterated that seems to be a common thought amongst the
Well,
community or collectors so far.
yeah, look, I mean, Steve and I obviously we get along. He's part of the team, the mod team as well, and even before that, we used to talk on and off. Our strategy almost mirrored. He came in a little bit later, and it's no secret; it's all in the blockchain. His collection is absolutely massive. I'm just getting some messages. um, so his collection is massive. He came with a bit more of a bigger budget, and credit to him, he risked some serious money even before this thing blew up. And I listened to one of his podcasts yesterday, and there was a period of time, as we all know, where we had a bit of a lull in the activity and all that sort of stuff. It wasn't a big lull, but probably enough to question maybe in his mind the investment because he would have put in some reasonable amount of money. For me, honestly, like I was free carried from day one because my probably best moment in terms of not the best moment in terms of in reality was when I sold the LeBron James Cosmic back in June, which like anyone listening go, well, that sounds pretty stupid because you sold one of the most valuable cards, 2 weeks into it, but that was my way of growing my collection very quickly. And back then, 12 ETH would have been about $2,800. So it allowed me to get basically to leverage what I call leverage down into whatever else it was. So instead of having one massive moment, I could get in a lot of packs. And I spoke a little bit about that, which is in past now. You'll never be able to do that ever again. Essentially, ride the RNG train and just buy enough packs to be able to come out on top. So that was one way that I grew my collection personally, and also the other one was then to sell some stuff off, invest in the base moments, which are usually fairly cheap, which then had the potential to go 50, 100, 150x, which a lot of it did. Did I think it was going to do that? No, not that quickly. No way. Like my goal was to turn couple grand into six figures. That was my goal. Like that was sort of like your dream goal, almost dream. Um, no one ever thought. I mean, you could probably reiterate the same thing. Who would have seen
Especially
these
so
values?
quickly. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So to give the guys again, this is all in blockchain. It's in you can check it. There's no secret to any of it. So my value went from that to it was actually I'll just bring it up because I do keep a track of it for and the reason you mentioned before Steve said about getting a feel for the market within that base set because I do hold a lot of base set. It becomes like what we call in the financial world an index fund. So it just tracks almost the market itself. So you can get a good pulse on the market by holding essentially one of every player. So my value, this is really interesting. Like it's so polarizing to just see the values. So 3rd of January was $42,000, 42,800. Then it slowly crept up to, a couple of grand here and there, and then got to the 15th of January and it was 120,000. So 3x from there. And then it went 120. A day later was 150, and then I didn't track it for a couple of days. From the 16th of January to the 22nd, it went from 150 to 600,000. And then
Absolutely insane.
this gets even more stupid. So from this 22nd, we go into the 29th. That's when it got to a peak of 1.3 million, and then from then it came down. So that 29th was a couple of weeks ago, which is just ridiculous. So that was in the back of that Bales purchase, who came in and brought a lot of people into our space from the DFS, which I only found out what that actually means, daily fantasy something sport. So from that 1.3, it's slid down to about 800,000 now, which it's still absolutely awesome. And it's actually worth a lot more than that, because part of my strategy was to always invest in low mint base numbers, base cards, base moments. So, if you look at it, I hold quite a lot of and Wild Shark will appreciate that. I've talked to him before about it, number 88 in the base set and that sort of stuff. So I mess around with those sort of things too. But yeah, it's the value just to see it go up and down is just absolutely incredible. So for me, coming back to what I said, my dream was to turn the 2-3 grand into 100, and have a lot of fun along the way. For me, it was more about that than really the value, because putting into a couple of grand I'm not risking anything really. To get to this point is just absolutely speechless.
And that is definitely, I would say, kind of one of the benefits of being an early adopter in projects, which comes inherently with risks, because projects are always, at the very early stages, rather uncertain. And we've seen a lot of really positive growth and support in this space, which is amazing. There have been speed bumps, but that's to be expected when you have some, market that suddenly, 10, 20x's, and you're like, well, now, that happened within the span of a week, because as you mentioned, with the big Bales purchase, and I think that it was the 13th or 15th of January that first LeBron moment had sold for, I think, 35,000, and then there was this string of very high profile, high number purchases, and that's when the rest of the marketplace sort of took off as well.
Yeah, so I do recall some of those very, very well, because I organised some of those. Not brokered even. I just, because I know a few of the people that obviously just from our early days, the people that hold these moments, they're very unique. So, everyone, when you look at the list of ownership, exactly who it is, like Glorious or Usman or whoever. So, you know what the name is on Discord. So I remember like it was yesterday, one of my fellow mod, Kai, he came to me and he said, I'm going to look for a LeBron Cosmic, because he came in late, invested a lot of money into the Holo set, but not a lot into Cosmic. So he came and said, look, I'm going to look for one. And he said, I'm willing to pay, or whatever it was, maybe $7,000-8,000. And I was like, well, that because I don't play in that space too much for my own reasons. I said that's quite a lot of money, because the next last sale was about 5-ish thousand. Anyway, long story short, he ended up buying one, and then maybe a couple of days later, another member reached out who was new to the space, just asked me a couple of things like how do rentals work and this and that. And I answered, we sort of got talking, and he goes to me, can you help me organise can you help me with the purchase? Do you know some people in the space? I want to buy LeBron Cosmic. And I was like, okay, here we go again, sort of thing. And I said, yeah, sure. I know the people, so I can touch base and I can at least point you in the right direction. So I said, what's your budget? What are you looking at? And this is when it started to really take off a little bit. I think Nate sold his for 12,000 or whatever it was, somewhere around there. So it was about 12, and he said to me, oh, look, it's about 20. I was like, oh, holy shit, that's quite a lot of money. I said, you realize the last one was sold for like might have even that one kite purchase for about eight or nine. Long story short, a couple of days later, he bought that for 17. I said, man, I hope this goes well for you because it's quite a lot of capital. A couple of days later, the mark fell again to about 25, 26, and then the rest is history. Like they just started, the domino effect just started, domino started to fall, and then maybe a couple of days later would have been the Bales Cosmic Ja Morant purchase, and that just, lit the fuse, as I say, on fire, and we haven't looked back. So it was quite an interesting couple of days there for sure.
Definitely sounds interesting because you had almost a firsthand experience of watching that momentum grow, right? Because
Yeah,
a lot of,
absolutely.
and it sounds like a lot of your networking and interactions is, kind of what helped facilitate some of these moves, which is really a testament to, your position in the community, being here so long and having so much knowledge of the space and the market. Like that's a really impressive thing to be able to do and have those
Well, I think,
connections.
as a lot of people do come to the trusted parties, which is basically us, the mods, the referees, and so forth. So rather than going to the dapper staff, they probably feel a bit more comfortable going to the referees and going, well, can you explain this to me? And obviously that's part of our role as well, to onboard people and help them out where we can, and so forth. That's how it happens. I've got to, I put stuff out there, so I try to help as much as I can, and one thing sort of leads to another. I'm grateful for having the friends that we've got in the community. It's a funny story is the gentleman that purchased the LeBron that, in my opinion, really started the domino effect. He's my accountant now, so he lives in a different state, but he's my accountant, so that's what he does for a living.
That's fun. And so, was it that you've used this crypto connection to make a real world connection? Or
Absolutely,
was
yeah.
that's insane, actually?
Yeah.
Like,
I hope he doesn't mind me saying this. I mean, people probably know him at least by alias, but it's quite funny because I had a real world call with him on a couple of days ago, and his assistant was there, and this two grown men talking about, like, and he's not small fish either. And he's talking about, oh, did you land the packs last night? And I'm just like pissing myself laughing because here we are, two grown men talking about landing $9 packs and being upset about not landing one, and his assistant's going like, what the hell is going on here? She has probably no clue. She says he's told her about it, but I could just imagine the look on her face when the boss is talking about landing, some digital cards.
well, there's something kind of magical about that, though, right? Because,
Oh,
if you
absolutely.
think
Yeah.
back to like when you first got into the cardboard cards and like opening packs, I remember for me it
Mm.
was actually the Marvel like X-Men cards back in the early 90s. That
Mm.
like that was the thing that I was like super into opening, and like there was nothing cooler than like opening the pack and seeing what was in it. And
Yeah.
so the fact that, Top Shot has recreated that experience, like the power of nostalgia is really huge, as well as, that surprise and delight.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Look, I agree. Yeah.
it's super fun. And having people that have that same experience, like you can really make connections over that.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the thing is too, with the cardboard, like it's so inaccessible, especially in a country like ours. It's accessible if you want to pay, three times what it's really worth, and at some point it just becomes a price that's just not worth paying, especially if you just sort of dabble in it a little bit, want to open it with your kids. It's just inaccessible to pay $400 or $500 for a box of cards. So um, that's why this filled a gap for me, and I think a lot of people as well. And it's one of those things it's instant, it's borderless. There's a lot of positives to it. If you can get your head around this, digital ownership space, and you can see yourself with how many people we've on board and how many people have come into the space. It's not really a massive learning curve. I don't know exactly why that is. Whether it's the profit opportunities, or it's probably just a mixture of all of it, really. But they just seem to come in and just fall in love with it, and the rest is history.
So I think on that note, since you mentioned, getting the people to fall in love with what's going on, what are you seeing in this space for either things to keep an eye on, or perhaps ways to increase the introduction of people to this? Like what is there, what is needed that you really think sticks out at this point?
That's tough. That's a tough one to answer. I love these questions because, like I said to you, I don't prepare for any of these interviews. I really like. I don't want the questions given to me beforehand. I actually hate it. So I love it when you just throw stuff at me, because you get the real answer then. Like, the stage is set, obviously. Like, you see what's happening. These NBA players tweeting about not being able to access Coinbase, and limits and all sort of stuff. So this is it. Like, if we don't capture this moment, so to speak, and we will, that's just it's not gonna be wasted. It will be captured. Um, Directly speaking about our own space and NBA TopShot, we really just got to get the platform to work, so it can handle all the capacity it's got currently, and what it's going to be thrown at it in due course. So, but in the wider NFT space, I still come back to NBA TopShot, because that's the portal to the rest of it, really. Because just like me, like anyone else, you get introduced to this through something you can relate to, and then as you venture into the rest of it, people start talking. Like, people invested in Pranksy's NFT boxes and all that sort of things, and they probably don't even know what they're holding, but they'll give it a crack, because they made some money in the NBA TopShots. They're happy to pay the $500 or whatever it costs. And that's just how it starts, I think. But I really do think the NBA TopShot is that sort of portal to the gateway to the rest of it, to really that mass adoption, which is what I said in July. I still stick by that, just because it has such a massive base of support. That's my opinion.
Awesome. And we've had some pretty cool community projects growing up out of the space. So obviously, we've looked with, Steve
Mm.
and the Intangible site, but there's
Mm-hmm.
also been a lot of, community Discord servers outside of the official one.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen a lot of podcasts coming up. So, we've got the first mint that happens, every Friday. And I know that you were actually looking at, started a NBA Top Shot Hour, not only the Discord, but maybe a YouTube series. What are your future visions for that? Is that something you'll be continuing?
Yeah, look, so the reason I do have a really crappy YouTube channel, just because my time is limited. I've been meaning to clean that up a little bit, just put an intro, but it's been there for maybe a month now. It basically, the reason why I put that out there was just to give me a hand at helping other members, because again, in our daily lives in the NFT community, we're always answering the same question 16 million times over. So I figured, if I can make a little video about it, introduce people to these tools and so forth, it'll help the team, all of us, really. And some other videos started popping up, which were just like literally not factual. So there was things being said that if people invested money, they potentially would have been putting money in the wrong went the wrong way. So that's the reason. That's the other reason why I wanted to just put a little bit of time. At least it was awful. Audio is awful. I don't really know what I'm doing, but it's simple enough. Just hit record and ramble, which is what it is. But it does show you some of the concepts, and how to tackle the market. What I think drives the values in the market, and that just comes from experience, really. And the reaction's been pretty positive, even though it was probably I'm probably responsible for about 300 of issues with ears and so forth with the audio. I did pick up a mic, so it's a little bit better now. And on the back of that, you mentioned the Discord, so that actually came second, which I only set up not long ago. And the reason, again, that was a bit evident to me where some of the more serious collectors and, um, like our fan panel as well, wanted a space that just wasn't moving at a million miles an hour, because that's something we're probably not used to ourselves. And to weed through 50,000 people and find the post that you find value, and have a bit of a more trusting space, people just ask for something, and that was why I set that up. It is an invite only filtered Discord, so um, at the moment it's got about 190 odd people in there now, so it will grow, but it's literally growing a person at a time. So as you know, I started with inviting some of the OGs, or the people that I respect out of the NBA TopShot space, just to give me a hand with some of that, and then the rest will be filled basically with new players. So to help onboard some of these new guys into a bit more of a collaborative environment. And I've got much bigger plans for that. It's probably more around the charitable side, but I'm more than happy to share some of that now. It's quite it gets more granular into a bit more detail, but that's sort of the longer term vision for that community. So so far it's going well. It's only been there for a week, so far so good.
Well, and I think that's really exciting. And the fact that you've started this community, you've identified this need, because obviously onboarding both to TopShot but also the crypto space as a whole, and especially this intersection of those two things, it's a lot for people to learn. It's like,
Yeah,
drinking from a fire hose. So even, any resources that are created, by the community, I would say, regardless of the quality, because I mean, you can't
yeah,
do things perfectly the first time or even the fifth time around. That's something that it comes with the experience and, troubleshooting and kind of making progress as you go. But it still has value, and that I think is important for people to understand, that even if you don't have the perfect setup or, all the configurations set the first time around, you're not going to be able to troubleshoot it if you don't get out and try.
yeah, exactly right. And look, I mean, so literally when I started my I don't even want to refer it to it as a podcast, because technically it's not. It's just on YouTube. I keep telling people it will be a podcast, but I'm just trolling a lot of people because they get sick of trying to listen on YouTube. I'm not. I'm just just time for to do the podcasting, to move it across. But the other hope is, for me, it's selfishly, I do have an investment in this space, so um, the more people we can onboard, more people we can bring in, that's a way of also protecting our early investment. Again, for me, it's not really a big deal. I didn't put much into it, but it has grown to a substantial amount, which personally, it can alter someone's life, like is it ours, mine, but also you can do quite a bit of good with even a fraction of that. So and that's what my attempt will be over the next whatever months and hopefully years and decades. So we'll see how that goes.
And I think that's a valuable thing for people to keep in mind, right? The projects that you invest in, like you have, by purchasing whatever the thing is, a very
Mm,
vested interest in the success of the project. That's kind of the bottom line. And with this, being in the NFT and the collectible space, having that project grow and succeed is only going to benefit everybody who's already in. And that's something that, even when there's a lull, that's kind of when people, the key point to push further and
hmm
get more awareness and kind of, give an extra nudge.
Yeah, absolutely. That's when you have to double down. I mean, if you truly believe in something, that's when you double down and, like you said, push harder.
We've seen in the whale community as well as we've
Mm,
been, going forward. There was the launch and then, kind of some steady progress and a weird, super hypey jump, and now we're back to being stable. But for a while, much like Top Shot, there was a period of perhaps slow movement, which
Mm,
sometimes causes uncertainty, and that's when you need to have faith, especially if
mm,
it's a project that you believe in and it has great people, which Top Shot community most definitely does, and the team is pretty awesome.
mm.
And
I
like
agree.
the greater vision is, oh my gosh, like will be world changing. So that is
Yeah, yeah.
a cool
I
thing
think.
to be a part of.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like, obviously, you guys have been around for a while, and speak quality when it comes to a community and what you guys do. I think when you mentioned, the sort of early life of a project where you've got this jump and then a lull, obviously a lot of that comes from excitement. If a project like yours or the NBA Top Shot, there is some relative success there. You've got people then cashing out, and then you've got this period where potentially you're left with some of the hardcore fans and a few other ones, and then that you need that spark again to reignite the fire, I suppose. But it makes sense because in terms of I remember the whale token coin went to some dizzying heights, and I don't follow much of the crypto space, to be honest, and the prices these days. I'm not sure what it's currently, but profit taking is always going to bring it down a little bit, especially when it's thinly traded. I think it wasn't massive volume, so but you're just going to work through that until you get that massive user base behind you, and the volume obviously follows with that.
That's really interesting how the same strategies apply across different projects. Like you can see the
Mm.
parallels with that. And we've got
Yeah.
some questions actually from the community they've been asking. And I think these might
Okay.
actually be tied together. So one of the questions is noting that Top Shot is showing what the sport community, can be done in the crypto space, what can be done there. So in your
Mhm.
opinion, which sport would be the next big thing?
Well, uh, it comes to raw numbers, to be honest. In terms of the next big thing, I think that has to be soccer or football. So, in particular, like if Dapper can get the Premier League license, I think that would be probably just as big, if not bigger than, probably not bigger than the NBA, because the NBA has that connection, that inroads, like I mentioned before, from cardboard to sort of like the digital Panini product. So they are aware of the digital space. Soccer, even like on the soccer cards, the cardboard really hasn't there hasn't been any action in that space at all until very recently. So with COVID and all that sort of stuff that happened, that hobby absolutely exploded. My own cards that I had went from worth being not much to being worth some serious amount of money, and that all happened because a couple of things in the cardboard space. But in terms of soccer cards, really they did nothing until the rest of this space exploded and carried the cardboard for soccer cards with it as well. So whether that would have the same impact, I don't know. But I think in terms of the digital side, obviously Dapper has proved a point with the basketball side. So you'll have all of those guys at least have a crack at the soccer product or whatever that is. I think, obviously we know Dapper has the UFC license, so that'll be coming out at some point in time. That would be massive too. I think that lends itself very well at the moment, essentially, to the UFC product as well, just because of um, you know, the KOs and TKOs, whatever. I don't follow UFC at all, so you can probably tell. But I think it really lends itself to that particular product, just capturing that particular moment. So I'd say if I had to bet, it'd be soccer and the UFC.
And that does actually answer the other questions that were being asked in chat because they were about the UFC. If you think they'd have, a similar success or community, or, those are kind of inherently tied together.
Yeah,
But
I think.
definitely with the UFC, like there's
Yeah,
a lot of action moments that would be really good to snapshot.
yep. Yep, I think so too. And the UFC community seems to be, massive across the world. Again, my only read on that is, and that's sort of the cues I take. It probably just comes from my experience in investing, because when you invest, especially in investments that there may not be a lot of information out there about the particular, like early stage investments, that sort of stuff. You sort of take any data, any cues you can to get a feel or read for some of these things. And my read on the UFC is, like, the more I talk to random people, and they talk more about UFC than they talk about basketball. So it's like I don't follow it myself. I'm sure I'd enjoy it if I did spend time watch it and follow it, but I know probably more people in my circle of friends that talk about the UFC, and across Twitter and stuff like that, than in some cases the NBA. So it's quite strange, but that's where I draw my you know um, research from, I suppose, for lack of a better word. And that's how if there is a beta, or if there's something when it comes to UFC, I will be investing probably heavily into that.
There is actually a sign up for it. It's not.
There is.
Yeah, let me snag that link and put it in the chat for everybody. For the UFC on Flow, which is still in the coming soon register for early access phase, but has definitely, I think, as you mentioned, like there is a lot of potential for that based on at least, social media instances of people referencing UFC, either, the
Mm-hmm.
matches or the players, or, there's quite the following. So I think that will be interesting to see, where NBA Top Shot and then the UFC digital collectibles can really take the space.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Because again, the basketball has the cardboard connection. UFC doesn't. I'm sure it does have some sort of cardboard, but it's so young, that entire industry. That will, if that could get some sort of following, respect to the moments, that would be a phenomenal success.
That's definitely something to look forward to. I
Mm.
think that we've covered most of the questions that have come through chat. I don't think I've missed any, although if anybody has anything that we haven't covered yet, definitely feel free to throw those in the chat. I know we're hitting about the hour mark as well, and I don't want to take up too much of your time. But I think that maybe for the last, couple minutes,
Mhm.
what are you most excited about in this space? Like, what's the thing that
In
gets you really pumped? I would say,
yeah,
the crypto space in general.
mhm. The crypto space, or the like NBA Top Shot. How narrow do you want me to go?
Include whatever you'd like. I know the NBA Top Shot space is, in the crypto space, but
Yeah.
I find it interesting to see, what people are really hyped about right now.
It's probably not the answer you guys expect or look for, but to me, honestly, it's just this like borderless community. Like, that's what I enjoy. Yeah, I just because to think that you've got, once this COVID, once we kick its ass, to think that you've got, all these friends across the world. You could literally go to any country in the world and have friends to meet up and have, a real life interaction. I think it's pretty cool, because at the end of the day, money, goes a long way, but we all die. You can't take it with you. So I think, it's all about the connections and some of the things you can live, you live through. So for me, it's really that I get excited about the community side of things, and that's why, that's why I have put a lot of effort, as as we all have, in the NBA Top Shot community. And we took that pretty seriously, even though, for me anyway, I've never done that sort of work before. But it's sort of panned out pretty well, and I've done the parallel Discord as well to our main NBA Top Shot, in part also to, which may sound a bit odd, but also to help our own mod team out, because taken out of guys that probably didn't really want to be part of the community. Not that sounds awful, but just didn't really want to mingle with the the guys. I call the general chat pits from hell or whatever. It's awful, as you know, most of the time.
We,
So
need a more niche space to discuss topics.
yeah, so I feel in a way that's also helping our own team out because it gives that certain segment a space to discuss. But yeah, just in short, it's just a community. It's getting to know the people, and I've formed a lot of great friendships, like you and I have, and a lot of the mod team has, because we've been through some stuff. We've seen things.
We have indeed seen some things, and I think that we will continue to see some things as we move forward, which is, what makes it interesting. No 2 days are ever the same. But
No,
actually,
that's right.
I would say I love that answer that you gave, about having, the connections in the community, because that's actually the thing that keeps me in the crypto space. Like, the projects are cool and the currency is cool, but the thing that really, I look forward to every day is checking Discord and connecting with the people and seeing, what everybody's up to and what we're excited about. And if
Yep.
somebody's stuck, how can we help them? Because, you know, if everybody succeeds together, that's going to work out, I think, a lot more than, if we end up going, this is actually the conversation before you joined the chat this morning, was with the, traditional finance and how it was generally just the elite that were kind of controlling all of the action. And now we have this more distributed, crypto environment that also allows, more connection amongst all the players in the game.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a magical sort of thing.
Oh, it is, and that's 100% agree. That's freedom. Coming from the traditional finance space, and I'm still in that space. I still have a 9 to 5, and like I said on my own YouTube channel, I said I'm trying very hard to get fired. It's not working very well, but so it is. It's just like the select few. And look, honestly, I do unfortunately see that in our space as well. With some of the bigger players, they do tend to, I don't know, just keep to themselves a little bit and hoard as much as they can. And that's what I don't like seeing in this space as well, where that it sort of grows into something bigger and replicates a little bit of the traditional finance. It's probably impossible to do that because, like you said, it's so distributed. There's always opportunities here, and it's awesome. But yeah, no, it's just a really great space to be in, and I think that's why, in part, you see these people coming in these guys and girls that have never touched the blockchain, never heard about it, never seen it, and they go, "Shit, this makes sense." Like I get it. I get what people are talking about now, and that honestly that happens now daily because I get the messages. And people just saying, this is amazing, thank you for this or whatever it is, and like you said, that's what keeps you going as well. Because for me, I do most of my work on the community side from like silly hours, like 10, 11 o'clock at night. So, like I said, I'm trying my very best to get fired from my day job.
That's, I think, a goal for many of us to, be able to get fired from those traditional jobs, or at least be able to step away
Mm,
and, fully immerse in the metaverse, in this, awesome space where we can
yep,
be part of the exciting projects and, make more and more of those community connections. So,
yep.
been awesome. Wades, thank you so very much for coming and chatting with me today about TopShot and your experiences in crypto. I know that we've, as you said, been through a lot, and that is absolutely true, but it's been a joy being able to get to, see a new side of, what motivates you and, get some of those more nuanced details. And I think that this has been helpful, for the community as well, to see different perspectives on how to approach, projects and jumping into the space.
Mm. I appreciate you guys having me on. It's always good. I'm not short of words. I can talk, as you can probably see, and like I just the connections. That's what I love about it. So to be able to talk to you as well for an hour has been great. You're a great host, so the questions are amazing. Uh, yeah, hats off
Oh,
to you guys too. You guys run a very cool community, so I can only model whatever I put together what you guys have going there.
thank you very much. I definitely love the whale community, but I also love the dapper community and kind of being able to be a part of this. It's
Mm,
definitely, once in a lifetime sort of experience. This is not something I would have imagined, 3 years ago, that's for sure. But
absolutely.
it's worth it. And so I'm sure that we will be able to do this again. And I look forward to seeing, what you're growing with the Top Shot Hour and, continuing to help develop the Top Shot community as we move along.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. It's been a pleasure. We'll close out the stream for today, but we will, I'm sure, have some more exciting adventures in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks again, guys. Have a good night, morning.
Yeah. Thank you all. Have a
See
good
ya.
day.